This is Rev Michelle Hopkins. I have been requested over and over again by some folks that are very interested in what Pinksapphiret, I call her Pink, and a lot of other people call her Pink or Pinky, has brought to the table regarding beams or lines or some sort of transmission that is being emitted from the Antarctic and from Australia and other places. Her Google Earth somehow is able to pick these up, and I really truly believe God is with this woman, because there is no way that I've been able to find a way to get these lines to come up on my Google Earth. I don't know how our programs are different for sure, but I know God has put her in the place that He's put her so that she can see these things. She doesn't realize what it is that she's seeing, and a lot of us don't realize exactly what these things are, but step by step, let's learn together. First of all, we know that Australia has a lot of Tesla Tech arrays, a lot of HAARP type arrays that use frequency to the tune of maybe 1 to up to 5 million megahertz. So that's 5 gigahertz of frequency. That is unbelievable. It's something that you can't even imagine. Now, the TTA emissions, the infrasound that came from the Antarctic region, it was being emitted toward this rift in these seas, this tectonic plate. This entire area is unstable all along this tectonic plate. They came from this portion of Antarctica. It came from a place very close to Casey Base, Antarctica. In a moment I'll show you Casey Base. It's not quite at Casey Base. It's outside the base. I mean, I wouldn't want to be on a base with this kind of emitter. As you can see, when you zero in on it, there is an emissions line. It goes upward from the base, because the farther it goes from the base, the less melting it actually causes on the permafrost in the Antarctic. As you can see, it's actually melting the permafrost on the Antarctic surface. It's pointing to right where it is, and if you go to this point, you can see exactly where it's being emitted from. That point comes all the way to the end of this antenna on this TTA. It's obscured under this obscurement, which tells us that it's top secret. But this emissions TTA is at the end of this antenna. The emissions arrow from the melting of the permafrost goes right to that TTA. And here we see the antenna up close and personal. It's right here, attached to this array. Right at the tip of this antenna is where that came from. It went right directly to it. And this is the installment that houses that TTA. It's only part of the installment, but it is the structure that houses that particular near Casey Base TTA. This is Casey Base. I believe this emissions TTA is affiliated with Casey Base. Casey Base has their own TTA, but it's a different TTA. And this is what I have meant by TTAs being all over Australia. As you can see, all of these green triangles that look like frequency being emitted, all of these markers on here that have to do with sound, all of those are what I call TTAs. They transmit large amounts of frequency, not merely for communications, but for many other reasons as well. Look at how many there are just on Australia alone. This continent of Australia is involved in a lot of TTA shenanigans. And it's interesting, we notice here that Australia seems to be taking over for Antarctica, hitting the same places that Antarctica was hitting with the same kind of frequency right along the shelf, right along this tectonic plate, where the Solomon Islands are, where the Santa Cruz Islands are, south of Papua New Guinea. And you have to ask yourself, why is it so important for these islands to experience earthquake? For some reason, the powers that be want these places to experience earthquake. And here in this video, we see there is a line, a beam, a transmission going from what looks like one of those TTAs to New Zealand. We're going to stop it right there, and let's go look at Google Earth and find out a little bit about this transmission. Go to Australia and see what Australia has to show us. That emission seemed to be emanating from this little notch in this area right here. And as we zoom down on it, we find a place called Proof Range. What is Proof Range? Well, Proof Range seems to be a Tesla Tech installation. First of all, nice round area with antenna. Then we have these silo-like structures. Now, this is not a farm. There are no farms in this area. There's no farmland in this area, no crops, and there's no structure around these silo-type structures that looks like grain is going in and out of them. These are not silos. These are Tesla Tech structures. I've seen them before, and they are Tesla Tech. We have more of them over here with the same kind of accompanying buildings and no other kinds of structures around them that would indicate that they are silos. There is a line going around the premises. But here are 4 different structures with what look to be antenna and accompanying structures in them. These are antenna arrays. Further in, there is a huge antenna. This has got to be 75 to 100 feet high. I believe the emissions that are hitting New Zealand are coming from Proof Range. The transmission, which was frequency, was up here on this little notch on the southern island of New Zealand. Let's look what's down there. Well, look at this. A fault line. This is a fault line that causes earthquakes This fault line could split New Zealand almost in 3 parts. And that's where the transmissions were hitting New Zealand. I have had outcries from people from New Zealand begging me to find out what is going on at New Zealand, because all these earthquakes that have been happening, there are issues with the Prime Minister of New Zealand. New Zealand has not signed paperwork for the UN, agreements for the UN. And this last earthquake that hit New Zealand, the Prime Minister of New Zealand called the last earthquake they had that was so devastating man-made. Not once, but twice. And then corrected himself very quickly.
There has been a lot of talk about the Christchurch quakes, and many suspicions point towards a man-made disaster. Along with emergency drills on the day of the quake, 9 US congressmen stepping on a plane to leave hours before the quake struck, and the head of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, visiting on that day. Those are the facts. Here is the theory. According to Benjamin Fulford, both the Japanese and New Zealand governments were threatened with earthquake weapons by the US before they each suffered catastrophic disaster. The allegation from Fulford is the US is preparing for major domestic unrest and wishes to use New Zealand's South Island to settle some 1 million refugees. I have no idea if this is true, and I don't necessarily believe it. The following is an audio recording taken from a meeting with John Key. In this recording, he slips up twice, saying that Christchurch was a man-made disaster.
Second thing is just the Christchurch earthquake. Can I just give you a little bit of a sense of what's happening there? So on the scale of things, it's large. So just to give you a bit of perspective, it's probably about $20 to $25 billion worth of rebuild cost. So as a natural disaster in a developed country, we cannot find a bigger example of something that's had a bigger impact on GDP. So the second thing it does is it buys reinsurance risk. So if there's a if there's a natural disaster like an earthquake.
New Zealand is listed as 3rd equal on Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. In my experience, perception is often far from reality. Listen to how John Key reacts when asked, is New Zealand going to ratify the United Nations Convention Against Corruption? Which, by the way, we're one of the few countries yet to ratify it. I'm no UN lover, but we can all agree, corruption ain't worth loving.
I'm just wondering, John Key, when the opportunity will come for New Zealand to ratify the Treaty Against Corruption.
Against corruption? Is that the UN treaty?
Yes.
I haven't looked at it.
Might be an idea too.
Okay. I mean, one thing I can say is, I don't know we haven't. I'll go away and look at it. The one bit of good news is New Zealand is generally seen, I think rightfully so, as one of the least corrupt societies. And I think actually that's true. In my experience, that's true anyway. I haven't seen that. And I've worked in Asia and other parts of the world, and certainly corruption is a much more significant issue there. But if you've got anything you think we need to go and deal with, we'll go and have a look. But I wasn't aware New Zealand hadn't ratified it. I don't know. It's unusual we haven't, but anyway.
Think for yourself and don't place belief on anything based on one video. Vincent Eastwood, Mr. News.
Is America facing instability within itself very soon? Unrest between the states and the president, the government, gun control, UN issues that the United States, the people of the United States are not happy with the idea of. There are those who believe that we are facing possible influx of enemy combatants on U.S. soil. to take over the U.S. from various countries? I don't know. Time will tell. But is the U.S. then going to send important people all the way to New Zealand to take shelter in a place where living is not so pleasant because of all the tectonic stresses going on, because of all the earthquakes that are happening there? No, I don't believe so. The UN is very upset with New Zealand. The TTA network globally operates under the auspices of the UN. In my humble opinion, where New Zealand is concerned, this is a message from the UN. Do what we tell you to do, or else. Now, why is the UN commissioning TTA bombardment along this tectonic plate? Well, if you follow this tectonic plate around, you realize it's part of the Ring of Fire. Here we're passing Japan and coming to America, and it merges the North American tectonic plate. The UN has commissioned instability throughout this entire region, around the entire Ring of Fire. The intel that I'm getting, that the cover story is what they're doing is bombarding the tectonic plates and the surrounding areas to ease that stress, to allow it to move in lesser motion, to create less devastation than it would if they just allowed it to move naturally. Now, whether you believe that or not is up to you. My humble opinion is that is a cover story. Agenda 21 comes to mind. The Lord God Almighty has words for those who do such things as to shake the people of the earth down to its core. Psalm 75 tells us, when the earth and all its people quake, it is I who hold its pillars firm, Selah. To the arrogant I say, boast no more. And to the wicked, do not lift up your horns. Do not lift up your horns against heaven. Do not speak with outstretched neck. There is a day that is coming that these words of the Lord will mean something to those who destroy the world. This is Rev Michelle Hopkins. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.